What if you can make a case for the Bible using only reason? No leap of faith required. Well, today we're going to dig into an argument that tries to do exactly that. So here's the big question, right? You've got this ancient text, and it claims to be a message from, well, from God. How in the world would you even begin to investigate a claim like that using just reason? Let's walk through how one argument tries to tackle it. Now, just to be clear, our goal here isn't to prove or disprove anything. We're just laying out the evidence as this particular case presents it. Think of it like we're examining the arguments, piece by piece, to see how they're built. All right, first up, the evidence of survival. And what's interesting here is that the first piece of evidence has nothing to do with theology at all. Nope, it's all about the physical book and its frankly unbelievable story of just sticking around. So, the argument starts with just sheer endurance. I mean, think about this timeline. You have dozens of authors writing this thing over a span of 1,600 years. And then, for centuries after that, you've got powerful empires and institutions trying their absolute best to wipe every single copy off the face of the earth. And yet, here it is. And it didn't just survive, right? It thrived. It spread like wildfire. We're talking translations into more than 200 different languages. The argument being made is that this is pretty incredible, especially when you think about all the books written specifically to attack it, most of which are long gone, totally forgotten. So this all leads to the first major point in the case. The argument is that its survival, against all odds, is some seriously strong circumstantial evidence. The logic goes like this. If the book claims to have a divine author, then maybe that same author has also been its preserver all this time. Okay, so from the book itself, the argument shifts focus to the people who actually wrote it. This next line of evidence is all about the motives of the writers, specifically in the New Testament. And the argument here really boils down to a simple question. What was in it for them? I mean, usually when people risk everything, they're chasing fame or wealth or power. But for these writers, their reality was the complete opposite. They got persecution, poverty, and, for many of them, a brutal death. The source we're looking at basically says, hey, reason tells us that the testimony of people willing to die for what they're writing, well, that's worth 10 times more than the words of some ordinary writer. Their willingness to suffer, with absolutely nothing to gain on earth, is what supposedly gives their words so much weight. Then there's the argument about the book's, well, its brutal honesty. It doesn't shy away from recording the massive failures of its biggest heroes. Guys like King David or the Apostle Peter. The point here is that this is the exact opposite of what you'd expect from propaganda or a fabricated story. You'd expect them to paint their heroes as perfect, right? But this text, it just doesn't. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've looked at the writers. Now let's look at the writing itself. The third piece of evidence dives into a really specific part of the text, the ancient legal code for Israel, also known as the Law of Moses. So a really common critique you hear about ancient religions is that, at the end of the day, they were just power structures, right? A way for priests to control everyone and get rich. This argument tackles that head-on by asking a pretty blunt question. Was the priesthood described in the Bible just another power grab? And the answer, according to this argument, is not at all. In fact, it claims the whole system was set up to do the exact opposite, to prevent priests from getting powerful. Think about it. They had no civil power, they couldn't even own land, they had to live off voluntary offerings, and they got no special treatment under the law. It was designed to be a system of service, not a system of control. And it goes even deeper. The case is made that a lot of these laws were way ahead of their time. I mean, they had stuff that was just unheard of back then. You had the Jubilee year, which was basically a reset button to stop families from being trapped in poverty forever. You had laws that demanded the same justice for foreigners as for citizens. And get this, you were even legally required to help your enemy if their animal got lost. That's pretty radical for the ancient world. All right, so we've looked at the book's survival, the writer's motives, and the legal code inside. Now, for the final piece of the puzzle, the argument zooms way out to look at the big picture, the entire Bible as one single story. And here's the claim, and it's a big one. Over a span of 1,500 years, you've got about 40 different authors. We're talking kings, prophets, fishermen, doctors, a real mix. And somehow they all ended up contributing to a single unified story, a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end, from the fall of humanity to the promise of a redeemer and all the way to a final restoration.
So, the core question becomes, how is that even possible? How do you get a bunch of different people from totally different times and cultures to write one perfectly cohesive story? The conclusion presented in this argument is that this incredible unity suggests there was a single divine author guiding the whole thing from behind the scenes.
So let's pull all these threads together now. We've got four main lines of evidence. Let's recap and see what the final cumulative case looks like.
So here's the case built on reason, all laid out. It really stands on four main pillars. First, its almost miraculous survival. Second, the pure, selfless motives of the people who wrote it. Third, its legal code, which was uniquely just and almost anti-authoritarian. And finally, that single unified story woven together across centuries. And the argument wraps up with this really powerful metaphor. Picture this. European explorers see the mouth of this gigantic river, the Orinoco. Some of them think, oh, it's just a river from that island over there. But the leader knew, no way. A river that massive couldn't come from a tiny island. It had to be draining an entire continent. And the argument applies that same logic to the Bible. The idea is that its depth, its complexity, its influence, it's just too vast to have come from a small human island. It must be draining a continent, which in this case would be God. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If an argument like this can be built entirely on reason, what role is left for faith? It's a fascinating question, and one worth thinking about.